There's a number coming out of Beijing that most investors may have completely overlooked, and it could matter for gold far more than it first appears. China's central bank has continued adding gold to its reserves, even as the gold market has faced periods of sharp volatility. And that raises a much bigger question. Why keep buying when the market gets shaken? Now add another major development to the picture. U.S. rate expectations are shifting, and markets are watching the Federal Reserve more closely than ever for clues about what comes next. So we have two powerful forces moving at the same time. China's continued appetite for gold and changing expectations around U.S. interest rates. What could that combination mean for gold and silver in the months ahead? That's what we're breaking down today on Money Insiders. If you follow gold, silver, the economy, and global markets, make sure you subscribe and like this video, because the next part is where the story gets interesting. Here's why this matters to you, whatever your relationship to gold or silver actually is. If you have a savings account, a mortgage, a retirement account, or you're just someone who's noticed that groceries and gas cost more than they used to, the Federal Reserve's next move touches your life directly. Interest rates decide what your savings account pays you, what your credit card costs you, what a new mortgage looks like, and how expensive it is for businesses to borrow and hire. And gold and silver, whether you own any or not, function as a kind of stress gauge for the entire financial system. When central banks around the world, the most conservative, risk-averse institutions in finance, start stockpiling gold at an accelerating pace, that tells you something about how they see the next few years playing out. It's not a guess, it's a signal. The question is what that signal actually means, and whether the obvious interpretation is even the correct one. Let's start with the headline number, because the raw data is genuinely striking. According to figures released by the People's Bank of China, the country's central bank added roughly 20 metric tons of gold to its official reserves in July. That's not a typo, and it's not a one-off. It marked the 21st consecutive month that China's central bank has added to its gold reserves, without a single month of net selling in almost 2 years. 20 tons in a single month is the largest addition since October 2023, and it came right after China added around 15 tons the month before that. In other words, this isn't a slow, steady drip anymore. The pace has been quickening every month since March, when the central bank's addition was less than a third of what it purchased in July. Picture a chart with a gentle upward slope for over a year, and then, in the last few months, that slope suddenly steepens. That's the image worth holding on to as we go deeper into this. Here's where the story gets more interesting, though, because the timing of this acceleration is what should really catch your attention. Gold just went through one of its roughest stretches in more than a decade. During the second quarter of this year, gold shed something in the range of 16% of its value, its worst quarterly performance since 2013. If you are a typical investor watching that kind of drop, the instinct is to wait, to see where the bottom is, to avoid catching a falling asset. China's central bank did not wait. It leaned in harder. And that single decision is the detail that separates how professional reserve managers think from how most retail traders think. Because those are two completely different mindsets operating on two completely different clocks. To understand why, you have to understand what a central bank's gold reserve is actually for, because it isn't a trading position. When an ordinary investor buys gold, they're often trying to catch a price move. Buy low, sell high, generate a return over months or a few years. A central bank's gold reserve isn't measured that way at all. It's part of a country's foreign exchange reserves, sitting alongside U.S. Treasury bonds, other government debt, and foreign currency holdings. Those reserves exist to back a currency, to provide a buffer during a crisis, and to give a country options if trust in another nation's currency or debt starts to erode. When you're managing money on that kind of multi-decade horizon, a bad quarter for the gold price is closer to noise than to signal. What matters to a reserve manager isn't whether gold is up or down this month. It's whether gold is becoming a more important piece of the overall reserve picture over years. And by that measure, China's gold holdings have been climbing steadily year after year, regardless of short-term price swings. Now here's a number that puts this in real perspective. As of the most recent detailed breakdown, gold made up close to 9% of China's total foreign exchange reserves, up meaningfully from where it sat just a couple of years ago. China's official gold holdings are now valued above $300 billion, and the total tonnage sitting in Beijing's vaults has climbed to a record high north of 2,300 tons. To put that in perspective for anyone watching who isn't used to thinking in tons of gold, that's roughly the weight of 6 fully loaded Boeing 747 aircraft, entirely in gold bars. And that's just the officially reported figure. That last phrase, officially reported, deserves a closer look, because there's a detail here that most casual coverage of this story leaves out entirely. Analysts who track the physical gold market closely have pointed to a persistent gap between how much gold is leaving vaults at the Shanghai Gold Exchange and how much gold shows up in the combined total of official PBOC purchases and private consumer demand. In plain terms, more gold is physically moving out of China's exchange system than can be fully explained by the numbers Beijing publishes. This has led some analysts to theorize that China's actual sovereign gold stockpile may be larger than what's officially disclosed. To be clear, this is a theory, not a confirmed fact, and it should be treated that way. There's no verified data proving a larger hidden stockpile exists, but the size of that gap and the fact that it has persisted for a long stretch of time is itself a piece of evidence worth knowing about, because it suggests the picture we can see publicly might be incomplete. So why would a government spend years quietly building a reserve position this large, even through a rough quarter for prices? This is where the larger economic pattern comes into focus, and it connects directly to something that's been building since 2022, when the United States and its allies froze a significant portion of Russia's foreign currency reserves in response to the invasion of Ukraine. It sent a message to every other government holding large dollar reserves. Those assets can be frozen. Gold, physically stored inside your own borders, can't be frozen by a foreign government with the stroke of a pen. Since that moment, central bank gold buying around the world has run at a historically elevated pace, and China has been one of the most consistent buyers in that group. This is what analysts often describe as a de-dollarization trend, a gradual multi-year shift by some countries to reduce their reliance on the US dollar and dollar-denominated assets as the backbone of their reserves. It's not happening overnight, and the dollar remains by far the dominant reserve currency in the world. But the direction of the trend, at least among certain central banks, has been consistent for several years now. There's another layer to this that often gets overlooked in the mainstream coverage, and it involves what's happening inside China's own domestic gold market, separate from what the central bank is doing. Chinese gold-backed exchange-traded funds, investment vehicles that let ordinary people gain exposure to gold prices without holding physical bars, recently posted their longest run of inflows in months, according to trading data. That matters, because it tells you the accelerated buying isn't confined to the government. Chinese institutional investors have reportedly been building bullion positions as a hedge against volatility spreading across other parts of their financial markets. When both the central bank and private institutional money are moving in the same direction at the same time, that's a stronger signal than either one alone. Now let's widen the lens further, because gold's recent strength connects to a specific and very current geopolitical backdrop that's been running in the background of markets for months. The United States and Iran have been locked in an ongoing conflict for roughly 5 months now, and as of the most recent reporting, there's been no breakthrough toward a peaceful resolution. In fact, tension between Washington and Tehran has recently escalated over demands for compensation tied to casualties from the conflict. Wars in oil-producing regions tend to do one very predictable thing to markets. They push energy prices higher, because traders price in the risk of supply disruption. And when energy prices rise, that filters directly into the inflation numbers that the Federal Reserve watches most closely. This is the thread that ties the gold story directly back to the second half of our title, because everything happening with interest rate expectations right now traces back, at least in part, to the same conflict. Here's the detail that changes the picture on the Fed side of this story, and it's the part that would genuinely surprise anyone who assumed the path of interest rates was already settled. For most of the past year, the dominant expectation in financial markets was that the Federal Reserve would keep cutting rates, continuing a pattern that saw 3 separate quarter-point cuts through the back half of last year. That expectation has essentially collapsed in recent months. The Fed's benchmark rate has been sitting steady in a range of 3.5% to 3.75% since the end of last year, under the leadership of a new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, who took over earlier this year. And rather than debating when the next cut will happen, a meaningful and growing share of market participants have shifted to debating whether the Fed's next move could actually be a rate hike. Let's pause here and explain what that actually means in plain English, because rate hike versus rate cut can sound abstract if you're not immersed in this every day. When the Fed cuts rates, it's making it cheaper to borrow money. Mortgages, car loans, credit cards, business loans all tend to get a little less expensive over time, and savings accounts tend to pay out less. When the Fed raises rates, borrowing gets more expensive, but savers can often find better returns on things like high-yield savings accounts and CDs. A hike is typically the Fed's response to inflation running too hot. It's a tool to cool down price increases by making money more expensive to borrow and spend. So the fact that markets have shifted from pricing and cuts to pricing and a real possibility of a hike is a significant reversal, and it reflects growing concern that inflation isn't cooling the way policymakers hoped. The data behind that shift is worth walking through because it's not just sentiment, there are real numbers driving it. Inflation, measured by the Consumer Price Index, came in at 3.5% year over year as of the most recent reading before this report, still well above the Fed's long-standing 2% target. At the Fed's June meeting under Chair Warsh, the committee's own internal projections, what's often called the dot plot, because each policymaker's rate expectation is marked as a dot on a chart, showed a notable hawkish tilt, with several participants projecting at least one more rate increase before the year is out, and a handful of members reportedly pushing for a hike as early as the following meeting. That kind of internal division at the Fed doesn't happen often, and when it does, it tells you policymakers themselves are genuinely uncertain about which direction the economy is heading. But here's the reality check that keeps this story from being simple. And it's important to include because responsible financial reporting means showing you both sides of the data, not just the dramatic half. As of the most recent information available, some of that hike speculation has actually started to cool. Weaker than expected U.S. jobs data released in early August led some traders to scale back their bets on a September rate increase. In other words, this is not a settled outcome. It is a live, evolving situation, with two major inflation reports due out this week that markets are watching closely for direction. If those reports show inflation continuing to run hot, hike expectations could firm back up. If they show cooling, the conversation could shift right back toward the possibility of the Fed staying on hold, or even eventually returning to cuts. Nobody, including the Fed itself, has fully made up its mind yet, and it would be irresponsible to tell you otherwise. Now here's where the two halves of this story actually collide, and this is the part that most coverage completely misses. Under normal textbook conditions, the relationship between gold and interest rates runs in a fairly predictable direction. Gold doesn't pay any interest or dividend. It just sits there. So when interest rates rise and safer assets like savings accounts or government bonds start paying more, gold becomes relatively less attractive by comparison because investors can earn a guaranteed return elsewhere instead of holding a metal that generates no income. That's why, historically, rising rate expectations have tended to put downward pressure on gold prices. So if markets are genuinely leaning toward the possibility of a Fed rate hike instead of a cut, you would expect gold to be struggling right now. Instead, gold is trading above $4,400 an ounce, sitting near 2-month highs, up over 30% from where it was a year ago. Silver, meanwhile, has pushed above $65 an ounce, also near multi-week highs. That is the contradiction sitting at the center of this entire story, and it's exactly the kind of gap between what the textbook says should happen and what's actually happening that rewards a closer look. So what's actually holding gold up despite a rate environment that should theoretically be working against it? A few forces appear to be offsetting each other here, and this is where the story widens into the bigger picture. First, there's the geopolitical risk premium from the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, which tends to push investors toward traditional safe havens regardless of what interest rates are doing. Uncertainty itself has a price, and right now that price is being paid in gold and silver. Second, there's pressure on the US dollar connected to broader currency dynamics, including reported friction around how the US has approached supporting Japan's efforts to defend its own currency, the yen, which has added to a general sense of currency market instability. A weaker or less predictable dollar often makes gold, which is priced in dollars globally, more attractive as an alternative store of value. And third, and this is the piece that connects everything back to where we started, sovereign central bank buying, led by China, isn't reacting to next month's Fed meeting at all. It's reacting to a multi-year strategic view about currency risk, reserve diversification, and insulation from geopolitical shocks. Those buyers aren't day trading interest rate odds. They're building a position they expect to matter over the next decade, not the next quarter. There's an important consequence hiding inside all of this that's easy to miss if you're only watching the headline price of gold. Silver's rally isn't just piggybacking on gold's momentum, it's being pulled by a completely separate engine, industrial demand. Silver isn't only a store of value the way gold is, it's a critical input for solar panel manufacturing and electrical grid infrastructure, both of which have seen surging global investment. Recent trade data showed Chinese imports of silver-bearing ore jumped more than 60% year over year in a single month, reflecting real, physical industrial appetite for the metal, not just speculative buying. That means silver is being pulled upward by two forces at once: safe haven demand tracking gold and industrial demand tracking the global energy transition, which is part of why silver's percentage gains have actually outpaced gold's over the past year. Let's bring this back to you directly, because all of this matters far beyond a chart on a screen. If you're a saver, the direction the Fed ultimately takes will shape what your bank pays you on your deposits for the next year or more. A hold or a hike generally means better yields on cash savings than a return to cutting would. If you're planning to buy a home or refinance, that same decision will shape mortgage rates, and a hike scenario would likely mean borrowing stays expensive for longer than many people were expecting just a few months ago. If you're someone building a retirement account, this story is a reminder that diversification exists for exactly this kind of moment. When two major forces in the financial system, interest rate policy and safe haven demand, are pulling in directions that don't fit the textbook relationship. That's precisely when having some exposure spread across different types of assets tends to matter most. And if you're simply someone paying attention to rising costs at the grocery store or the gas pump, The inflation data coming out this week is genuinely one of the more consequential releases of the year, because it will heavily influence whether the Fed leans toward holding steady, hiking, or eventually returning to cuts. It's worth being honest about what we don't know here, too, because a responsible read of this story requires resisting the urge to force a tidy conclusion onto something that's still unfolding. We don't know whether the Fed will hike, hold, or eventually cut at its September meeting. The data due out this week could shift those odds meaningfully in either direction, and Fed officials themselves have shown a real internal disagreement about the right path. We don't know how long the conflict between the US and Iran will continue, or how much further it could push energy prices, which is itself one of the biggest wildcards hanging over the inflation outlook. And we don't know with certainty whether China's central bank will keep accelerating its gold purchases at July's pace, or whether that was an unusually large month within a longer, steadier trend. Some analysts expect the broader central bank gold buying trend across many countries, not just China, to continue for years as a structural shift in how reserves are managed. Others caution that gold's rapid run-up in price could eventually slow institutional buying if valuations start to look stretched. Both views are represented among serious market analysts today, and neither should be presented to you as a guaranteed outcome. So where does that leave us? Coming back to the original question this story opened with. China's central bank has been buying gold for 21 straight months, accelerating that pace even through gold's worst quarter in over a decade, driven by a long-term strategic view about reserve diversification and insulation from currency and geopolitical risk, not by short-term price moves or interest rate speculation. At the same time, the Federal Reserve is navigating one of its more genuinely uncertain stretches in years, caught between elevated inflation partly fueled by an ongoing war in an oil-producing region, and softening labor market data that argues for caution before raising rates further. Under normal conditions, rising rate expectations would be expected to weigh on gold. Instead, gold and silver are both trading near multi-week highs, propped up by a combination of geopolitical risk, currency uncertainty, and a wave of sovereign buying that simply isn't playing by the usual rate-driven playbook. The lesson here isn't that gold always goes up, or that a Fed hike doesn't matter. It's that when you're trying to understand a market move, you have to ask who's actually driving it, and on what time horizon. A central bank managing reserves for the next decade and a trader reacting to next month's Fed meeting can look at the exact same gold price and be responding to two entirely different stories. Understanding which story you're actually watching is what separates genuine insight from just reacting to a headline. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insiders. And like this video, more powerful financial insights are coming next. This video is AI generated.